Wow, can't believe we're here at vlog number 5. As I say in every vlog, I don't really know where this is going, but I hope it's helpful. It seems to be helpful to people who are who have already made Aliyah, thinking about making Aliyah. But I'm sitting here with Robert Ferris, who is an engineer, and he can help. He's very helpful to people who are buying homes. It's very good to have your home inspected by an engineer before buying a home, and he's very helpful. I've done a couple deals with him, and he's been great. So nice to have you, Robert Ferris. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're sitting, where you're from, a little bit of a background so we can get to know you.
Sure. So I'm originally from England, from London. I made Aliyah 6 years ago. We landed with my wife. We landed in Jerusalem, and we're there for about 6 months while we were working out where we wanted to live. And then we settled on Khashmonai, where we are now, and I'm here now. Yeah, well, we have a little boy and a little girl now,
Oh, nice.
which is lovely.
Okay.
And yeah.
And what was your biggest challenge in your Aliyah journey? Because everybody has challenges, and the whole point of this video series is to help people feel comfortable in making Aliyah and realize that everybody has challenges. So tell us a little bit about what your major challenge was and how you overcame it.
I think my major challenge is kind of actually is the banks, but generally it's kind of understanding that when you come here you have various expectations based on what you're used to in England, and you come here and things work differently, and it's just getting my head around understanding that not to expect things to work the way they do.
Very interesting, because typically people say the banks here, I mean, they're British mandate. So I always thought that the banks in the UK would be the same. So people who are from the UK would have no problem dealing with the banking system here, but apparently that's not the case.
No, very different experience.
Okay, good to know.
But they're getting there. They're getting there. We're working it out.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so now let's jump into some business stuff. Let's unpack where you are in the business world and how you can help Olim. Tell us about your company that you have and what you offer.
Sure. So I'm a structural engineer. I've got 13 years experience as working for some of the best design consultancies in both England and in Israel. I still do work for one of the best ones in Tel Aviv. Basically about a year ago, I decided to open Ferris Structural Engineers to help Olim with the engineering aspects of buying houses. So what I do is I do Bedek Bayit reports, which is a engineering condition survey of a property before people buy. And what I do is I kind of assess the structure, assess the waterproofing, and see whether there are any defects. I produce all my reports in English as well. So yeah.
Okay, so typically a report would be in Hebrew, as we are in Israel, and you could produce that as well. But somebody who's making Aliyah, especially from an Anglo country such as the UK or America, they don't understand. They won't understand the Hebrew in the report. So you're able to offer it to them in English, not necessarily like translated English, and that's very helpful.
Exactly. And more than that is what I do is for clients who are here, when I go around the house, what I do is at the end we summarize and I show them all the issues that I've spotted, and try and diagnose them and use my experience. I mean, my main experience is in reinforced concrete structures. And happily 99.9% of all residential structures in Israel are built from reinforced concrete. So I can use that experience to kind of mitigate the risk to the client. A couple of weeks ago with a client, and we found a crack in one of the walls. And the client was very concerned about this crack. But what we did was we reverse engineered the house, and worked out that actually the crack was something very superficial and not something that needed to be worried about. It could just be plastered over. So yeah.
Okay, so typically in America or the UK, I think also, you don't see these types of cracks in the houses, but the way the homes are built here, There's cracking, there's settling, and some cracks are okay to deal with, and you shouldn't be scared off from every little crack, I guess.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. What's
Okay.
important is just for me to understand and try and diagnose where these issues come from, and if there's a reasonable explanation, and you can work it out, and you can work out what to do with it, then it's not always a bad thing.
Right. Okay. Is this something that before you made Aliyah that you had thought of doing? You had planned to do this, or this came about um, after you had already made Aliyah and you saw a need for it? How did you start? How did you start getting into this?
A great question. I mean, I worked on a few designing refurbishments for a few existing buildings, particularly while I was in the UK. So I had experience already of going around buildings and kind of diagnosing issues. And then we've gone through the home buyers process a couple of times now since we've
Right.
been in Israel, and kind of realized that there aren't many structural engineers that will do this and produce English reports and take clients round. And clients, what I try and do is, or Lim, or people looking to make Aliyah, I try to have a Zoom meeting with them, for example, straight after
Right.
I produce the report, which you and I done together.
We did that. We were on the call for a long time.
We were on the call for a long time, but yeah, and that kind of gives the client confidence that they understand the reports and they have a better understanding of all the issues.
Okay. Wow, very interesting. It's good. You're definitely giving an excellent service. What makes your company, I guess, different than the other competitors? If you could tell us one or two things that makes you kind of stand out versus other engineers. I mean, I know what I've seen, but let's hear it from you.
I mean, I think I what I do is I do a very thorough inspection of every building. I look at the structure in particular because ultimately that's the most expensive thing when
Right.
there are issues. I look at the waterproofing. I do a high level survey or a high level assessment of the electrics, the air conditioning, and the plumbing. I always recommend actually
And the
the
tree
professional
seam.
and the Trissim, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, make sure everything works.
That's
Uh,
something that's different in Israel versus every place else, right?
you're right. The window shutters, not they. It's something very specific to Israel. So actually, yes, I go through that. And I do, and I also check for moisture. So, are there leaks? Where are the leaks from? How much would it cost to fix the leaks?
Right. So I think that's something very important. What you just said is in an engineer report. What's nice that a buyer would receive is you get the whole report. What's wrong with the house? Not necessarily what's wrong with the house, but what are some issues that you see at the house? And then one of the last pages, maybe it's even the last page, you give a full report of what it will cost to repair the home. So there's really no surprises when you're going into buying a home. And I always tell people when they're buying a home is, a guy walks into a house and the house is in, it's not necessarily old, but it's not in the best condition. And I'm like, don't be nervous, because if there's really a problem, the engineer will find it. And not only will he find it, he'll also tell you kind of how to fix it and how much it'll cost to repair. So it's not as scary. I think what an engineer has the ability to do is make the process of buying a home. Forget about the financing. That's a whole other story and a whole other could be a scary venture in and of itself. But I think just buying the structure of the home, an engineer could kind of like guide a person into feeling more comfortable into buying a structure. Now, you said you're an expert in reinforced
Concrete.
concrete.
Yes,
So explain to us what in like, I don't know, one sentence, what does that mean? Because
sure.
that's how homes are built here in Israel. And I think that's also, people always ask, why are there no closets in the house? And I think one of the reasons is because of the material that the home is built from. It doesn't allow for that type of construction.
Sure. I mean, so if you're in America, I designed a bunch of buildings in America, and they were typically either cold form steel or stud walls or timber stud walls. And they were timber frames, and that's the main structure of the building. In the UK, a house would be brick walls with timber floors with timber joists in the floors. Whereas in Israel, you have reinforced concrete frames, so you have concrete with the steel reinforcements inside it, and then the walls between any columns or any concrete walls will be made of concrete breeze blocks. And so that means that it's like in America, where you would have where you very easily be able to feed an electrical cable from one part of a wall to another without tearing out the whole wall. Here things are slightly different, and construction processes, the construction techniques are different.
That may have been the most important answer that you've given to me in this interview, because I think that's what people need to understand about the difference between a home in America or the UK and Israel. And I think that was a fantastic explanation. What's the biggest in your line of business? What was the biggest challenge in terms of, or if you've encountered a challenge in helping somebody that was making Aliyah buy a home, of a success story where you've helped somebody buy a home here in Israel?
Or I've helped someone buy a home. I can tell you a story about a client where actually for the first time I said that they shouldn't buy a home.
Okay, that's definitely interesting.
And it was very recently. And I went and I did a survey. The client was in America. And I very quickly realized that the seller was trying to hoodwink my client. And there were so many risks which were inexplicable. So many leaks that I couldn't diagnose. I didn't know where issues were coming from without tearing out the building. That I actually recommended that the client didn't buy the apartment, and they look elsewhere, because there was such a high risk to them, and they weren't able to understand that living in America. So I was their eyes and ears here. But yeah.
Okay, listen, I think that's fantastic. And I think that's, like I was saying before, the engineer can really bring a level of comfort or a level of reality to a buyer, because you don't really, it's hard to tell in these concrete walls what you're actually getting. And that's super helpful. So you've told me about a situation where you've helped somebody not buy a home because you didn't feel you were comfortable, and you did your job. That's your job. If you see something really outstanding, that's your recommendation. Don't buy this home. It's a disaster. But tell us a story of a success story where something was kind of like, it was a home where somebody who's not a professional, they don't know the construction of an Israeli home, and to them, to an untrained eye, no, I shouldn't touch that home. But now you're coming in and saying, wait a minute, everything that you see, not really what you see. And
so there was an issue with the waterproofing at roof level. And what we did was we worked out where the issue came from. We're able to advise roughly how much it was going to cost to rectify that. And that helped our client to negotiate with the seller, because to negotiate the price with the seller, because they knew how much it would cost to get the house livable in.
So in this particular situation, it's something that somebody who doesn't know might have seen the damage in the home and thought it was something really scary and crazy. But at the end of the day, there's a leak from the roof. It needs to be patched up, fixed, done by a professional, and it's a great house. And this happens often. I go into homes all the time, and I'll see mold spots in a bathroom. And then you bring in an engineer. Really, all it is a matter of ventilation. Sometimes when you take a shower, you have to leave the window open in Israel to provide proper ventilation in the home. That doesn't mean that there's something structurally wrong with the home, and you shouldn't buy the home. Okay, fantastic, Robert. Thank you for having taking the time to join us, and I know this definitely added value to our listeners. And if anybody has any questions for me or for Robert, please feel free to reach out. Our contact information will be at the end of this video. Robert, have a great day. Thank you for being with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.